I pulled out my Kitsune shirt because in this video I'll technically be talking about, well, something that turns into a Kitsune. Um, so if the title and the thumbnail didn't give it away, I'm going to be talking about Rika and Renamon in this video. Rika no Naka, or as she's also referred to as the Ruthless Digimon Queen, we'll get into that, is kind of one of the three main protagonists in Digimon Tamers. She's kind of the lead female that they have, and she kind of goes through this very major transformation in regards to her personality and the way that she kind of looks at the world. As I said, with Takato and Henry, they go through their own, character arcs as well. But I would say out of the three of them, Rika goes through the biggest one, the most drastic one. And what we kind of see happen is for Rika, she starts off, well, first of all, she's like 10 in the Japanese, she's 13 in the English dub. So technically, I think she's supposed to be just slightly older than like Henry and Takato in the English dub. And so her main personality, to a degree that she has in the beginning, is, she's kind of like, the cool kid that kind of is rebellious against her parents a little bit, mostly, against her mother. Her mother's a supermodel. Rika doesn't want anything to do with that. She doesn't really care about fashion or anything along those lines. She does love her mother and her grandmother, but she has a very strained relationship with them. And her father, her parents are divorced. Her father is estranged even more. She does say at some point that she could go and see her father if she wanted to, but she just doesn't ever really want to. And she is also, as a way of kind of just finding something she liked, she had started to do, the Digimon trading card game and, battling and, being a Digimon tamer in that regard. And she, worked her all the way up through all of these different, regional finals and, tournaments and everything. And like, I think became like, referred to as like, the Digimon Queen, during, her time frame in that, like the Tamers circuit. And that resulted in how she got Renamon, which I will talk about. Rika also tends to look at Digimon as these things that are to be fought and destroyed, that having a strong Digimon is important, and that having a Digimon that can defeat other Digimon and then absorb their data to become stronger means that she is the best. And that's kind of one of these things that is part of Rika's personality for the first several episodes of the series while we are getting to meet her. That being the best, being in control, knowing all of the outcome, or knowing exactly what to do, and proving that she is the best, partially because, her mother still kind of treats her a little bit like a child and doesn't quite seem to understand how much the Digimon card game means to her, and keeps trying to push Rika into the fashion world. She doesn't really want to do that. Rika doesn't want to try that. But what we kind of see happen is, she goes through this major change, which I'll talk about, and her Digimon, Renamon. So Renamon goes through the forms of Viximon is the in training form, just this cute little yellow fox that is adorable. And then we have Renamon, which is the main form that she's in for the majority of the series. Then we have Cubimon, that is kind of the Kitsune form. Yes, there was a controversy between this Cubimon and Ninetales from Pokemon for very obvious reasons. They're both based on the same creature, but there were certain issues in regards to this. And then we have Daomon or Taomon, the way that they pronounce it in the English dub goes back and forth, which is her ultimate form. And then we have Tsukuyamon, who is her mega form / biomerged form with Rika. I do admit, out of all the biomerged forms, I do love Tsukuyamon so much, and her transformation sequence is just so beautiful. And Renamon, to a degree, starts off very similar to Rika in the fact that she just wants to train to be the best, absorb data, get stronger, prove that she can get stronger. She just wants a strong tamer, and Rika just wants a strong Digimon. And, they both go through this very being independent of each other too, and then, you know, getting to be much closer and such. That I like that they show that throughout the course of the series. Renamon is also, at least out of the three main Digimon, out of Terriermon, Guilmon, and then Renamon, Renamon is definitely, I would have to say, the smartest and definitely the most mature and observant, because there's multiple times where Guilmon's like, well, I believe Renamon's right now. She's always been right, so why would that change? So why would now be any different? But we see them go through this more, you know, their relationship change between the three of them throughout the course of the series, where they become much friendlier with each other. And that moves us into actually kind of more going into, you know, Rika's backstory and her history in the series. So basically what we see for Rika is, as I said, she went through all of these different, you know, Digimon, you know, Grand Prix battling and everything like that, and, you know, defeated all these different opponents and everything. One of them was Ryo Akayama, who was this other tamer that she, you know, battled, and he was like the one that she couldn't beat, but then he disappeared, and then she became the Digimon Queen after that. And a lot of people said, well, if she you know, if Ryo hadn't disappeared, then she wouldn't have become the Digimon Queen. And that's brought up a lot later in the series. We don't find that out until ways later in the series. It was stated that Rika was born to her mother when her mother was 18 years old, so it is kind of hinted that it might have been like a teenage pregnancy situation, but in Japan, those things are sometimes a little different. We know that Rika and her mother and her grandmother are very well off. Her mother's name is Rumiko, and as I stated, she's a supermodel. I'll talk more about Rika's mother and grandmother in the Rika's family video when I get to that down the line. But one of the things that we see with Rika and her mother, as I said, and it's not as strained as Rika and her mother's relationship is very strained, but the relationship between Rika and her grandmother isn't quite as strained. But then there's still like these different family dynamics that go on in that family. And what ends up happening is, after she's like won Digimon, you know, Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it, she's in her room and she ends up actually, you know, all these kind of different portals to a degree open up to the digital world, where there's all these different Digimon, and they're just like, you know, pick me to be your be your partner. Pick me. I want to get stronger. I want to digivolve and everything like that. And Rika is just like, I just want one. I just want one strong Digimon. And that's when Renamon appears. And, you know, Rika then gets a blue card, and she swipes the blue card, and she's able to then, you know, get a Digivice, and then Renamon is brought into the human world, into the real world. And, you know, during that time frame, that's when they continue to, you know, battle with other Digimon appear in the real world. You know, Rika and Renamon will go and, you know, fight them and defeat them, and Renamon will load their data, and, you know, Rika will try to, will help Renamon with like using the modify cards, but, you know, for like, you know, her speed or her, you know, different things like that to help Renamon against the different Digimon. But what also happens is, during that time frame is, you know, Rika is, of course, very much set on trying to prove that she is the best. And one of the things that happens is, during one of her battles, she's actually part of a dream. Hi, Rainy. You want to come in here? Come here. You can come in here. You can be in the video. I'm kind of talking about well, it's a fox, but, you know. Up. Okay, up on the bed if you want. If not, that's up to you. And, yay, puppy. We have puppy. Ready? Hi. I will take spot on bed. Yeah, I know, you're fluffy. And what happens is, Takato actually dreams about Rika, and he watches her as her and Renamon fight Lynxmon. And, you know, after that, like, when he sees Rika for the first time, because the first time that Rika sees him, she basically just has Renamon attack Guilmon, and the two of them start fighting. And, you know, Guilmon is, like, at least strong enough. Guilmon's, like, I think like a day and a half to 3 days old at this point in time from the time that he hatched. So he's not very old, but he's already somewhat able to, at the very least, kind of, push Renamon away and kind of keep her off of him. And Rika's main, argument that she makes to Takato and Henry in regards to why why her and her Digimon fight against other Digimon is, duh, that is what Digimon are. Duh, that is what Digimon do. They fight. And when they win, they get stronger. And when they get stronger, they Digivolve. You two are just our stepping stones. Yeah, she starts off in a pretty, this is what's going on, this is why I battle with the Digimon. That's my intention. And kind of what we see happen in this time frame is, several times, like at least one other time, Rika tries to attack, Takato and Gilmon and have Renamon fight Gilmon and such. So we see that happening. And then the first time that we kind of see Rika seem scared is when Terriermon digivolves into Gargomon and can't control himself, and she almost gets hurt. Renamon does save her, but she almost gets hurt, and that just kind of makes her, very shaken about this, but she also kind of, gets angry and scolds Renamon and the fact that she's like, I gave you 2 Modify cards, and you didn't digivolve, and that bunny digivolved without having any cards activated on him, so what is the problem? And, Renamon is a warrior. She's, lived in the digital world for a while. Terriermon lived in the digital world too, but I'm assuming that by technicality, Renamon's been around a little bit longer than Terriermon. And Renamon is very much able to, she kind of takes it in stride, but she also starts to develop this kind of interest in, or like fascination with Impmon, because Renamon starts to develop fascination with Impmon because Impmon keeps like coming to her and like taunting her about being a Digimon with a tamer and like all this other stuff, and Renamon's just kind of fascinated by him because he obviously seems to have an issue with tamers, yet he tends to stay around people and he tends to talk to her and Gilmon and all this other stuff, and she's just like, aren't you a little interesting thing? And what we see from there is, hi, baby. Are you a good baby? Rainy Eyes has pillows. They are soft. Yep, they are. And what we see happen is throughout this time frame, Rika and Renamon continue to battle other Digimon, load their data, get stronger, all this other stuff. And yet Renamon can't seem to Digivolve. And then there's this moment where, basically, the Digimon Dokuamon shows up, and Renamon ends up actually digivolving because she's trying to protect Rika. And, Rika is somewhat confused by this, but Renamon is finally able to digivolve into Cubimon, into her champion form, which Rika is very happy about, but she's very confused because, like, she didn't use a card to make it happen. It happened on its own. It happened because Renamon was trying to protect Rika, but Rika had also, it was this thing where it's like Rika was in danger, so it was just like this moment where Rika is very confused by this. And basically, shortly after that, what happens is, Rika ends up actually getting kidnapped by a Digimon that is called Ice Devimon. And he kidnaps her, and he says that he's been looking for a very strong trainer and everything. And he puts her in like this ice domain thing that he built, which apparently nobody in the city ever notices because it's like built on top of this building and nobody sees it except for Takato and Henry that show up and try to save her and Renamon. And Ice Devimon is kind of like, you're cold to your own Digimon, because Rika kind of got angry at Renamon at some point because, Rika is just not used to this concept of like, Renamon kind of, she's used to being able to control what goes on with her own Digimon, but she wasn't able to control when Renamon digivolved, even though she did digivolve finally. She was like confused about this. And Rika, Rika gets kidnapped by Ice Devimon, and he's like whispering in her ear, like, she's not worthy of you. You deserve to have a stronger Digimon. I can be your Digimon. I've captured all of these other Digimon and like frozen them solid as like trophies, and he's very messed up in the head. And there's all this different, he's like taunting her, but also like saying that Renamon is weak and everything. And during this time frame, Rika ends up saying to Ice Devimon,
"No, I couldn't see it before, but there's more to Digimon than fighting. I would eat dirt before I ever let Renamon become what you are, a monster."
And during this time frame, Renamon and Takato and Henry and their Digimon have arrived, and Takato and Henry are like working to try to get Rika free. And Renamon does, I believe Renamon does Digivolve up to Cubimon to try to protect Rika again, because Rika's in danger, so she is able to Digivolve. And she gets like swatted away by like Ice Devimon. And Rika, Ice Devimon's like, why do you look at her like that? A Digimon is only useful if it can fight. Tell me, why do you care for this pathetic creature? And Rika goes, she's my friend. I care because Renamon's my friend. And that actually is, I believe, what allows Renamon to Digivolve again. And between her and Guilmon, they're able to defeat Ice Devimon. But Rika was kind of scared because she saw the way that like Ice Devimon was, and she kind of doesn't want Renamon to end up the way that Ice Devimon is, and she actually kind of ends up, kind of giving up being a tamer. She like gets back to her house and she throws her cards and her Digivice into the trash can, and she's like, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I don't want anything to do with Digimon or taming or anything. It's stupid. And, she's just angry because she was scared because of what happened with Ice Devimon, but she's also concerned that if she continues to make Renamon battle, that Renamon will become the way that Ice Devimon is. And she doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want Renamon to become a monster. And, during this time frame, Takato and Henry both kind of try to, make Rika reconsider, basically. And, like, Calamon shows up and tries to make Rika reconsider. And, at some point, during this time frame, we also, like, meet Rika's mother a little bit more and find out that Rainy is trying to put his head by the window. And it no work. And what happens is, I'll tilt that a little bit so you can see Rainy. There you go, you can see Rainy. And what happens is, Rika, this is where we meet Rika's mother a little bit more, and, find out that she's a supermodel, that, she's so beautiful, and she's on, posters and billboards and everything. And Rika just kind of doesn't want anything to do with her mother, to a degree. And, Rika feels much more comfortable being a tamer than she does being around her own mother. And, her grandmother tries to help with this, but it doesn't go very well. And Renamon and Henry actually end up having, I don't remember if it's a conversation or if it's just more like a stare off, but eventually there are these Digimon that shows up that are called Flybemon, and, Rika shows up because, her Digivice tells her that that's where Renamon went, and she goes on kind of instinct to, like, see what happens, but Renamon is able to defeat the Flybemon on her own without having anybody help her, including Rika, and that makes, Renamon goes, I beat them on my own, but why do I feel so empty about it? And Rika saw this, and she's just like, Renamon doesn't need me anymore, and, doesn't want her cards anymore still. And then Harpymon shows up. And when Harpymon shows up, she is actually able to overpower Renamon, and during this time frame, Rika shows up. Takato and Henry are there to witness this. And Rika ends up actually picking up the stick, because she doesn't have her cards with her. She picks up the stick and stabs Harpymon in the back, which is, I guess, enough of a catalyst to allow Renamon to Digivolve, and then she is able to defeat Harpymon, but she doesn't load Harpymon's data because she tells Rika, I don't need that data anymore. I don't need to download any more data because I have you. and you're what gives me my strength. And that is like where they're like much more set in stone in regards to how they start acting as friends, and which is nice. But one of the other things that happens is like this is when Takato and Henry go on like their trip, and like Rika gives Renamon like an energy drink, and they're just like, oh, my first gift, and like Renamon's just happy about that. And during this time frame, Renamon has like continued to have like her little fascination with Impmon and everything. And this is kind of like where the first movie happens, the Battle of Adventure, which is during the time frame when Henry and Takato go off on their little vacations. Rika is left in the city, and the three of them are kind of getting along a little bit better now at this point in time. During this time frame with starting to fight the Devas and everything, they've all gotten to the point where they can ultimate digivolve. So there is kind of an incident that happens before this where the Digimon that are the ox and the sheep show up, and Vajramon, who is the ox, shows up, and he kind of ends up developing this fascination with Renamon, and he takes Renamon away. Renamon goes willingly with him. It's not like he kidnapped her or anything, but Renamon goes with him because she has questions for him about the Devas and about the Sovereign and everything. And while Renamon is gone, Rika ends up going to this photo shoot with her mother, and is like part of the photo shoot because it's like a camera test and everything to see how Rika holds, does with the camera test. And she's wearing this not Rika outfit where she's just, not happy with the outfit. It's very pink and frilly and everything, and she doesn't really like it. But she like tries the camera test, and it just does not go well. And she like runs out, and eventually, Renamon shows back up with Vajramon, and during this time frame, Vajramon fights against her, and this is when she digivolves into Talmon for the first time. And he had called her Cubimon form even more beautiful because it's even more beastly looking than the humans. And then when she digivolves into Talmon, he's like, why did you digivolve into this? You just look more like a Digimon. And Cubimon is able to defeat him, and Talmon is able to defeat Vajramon at this point in time. And we have this great moment where Renamon is like standing in the moonlight, and Rika goes, and I just think you look so cool, so heroic standing in the moonlight and everything, and I'm happy you're back and everything. So we have that moment, and then this is where it goes into the movie. And Rika and Renamon like stayed to like kind of keep peace in their in their hometown, and then they end up having to fight against I want to say it's Meramon, but it's not Meramon because it's like a blue version of Meramon. And I don't remember if that means that it's just blue Meramon or what, but I don't remember. But they have to fight against him. And then Rika and Renamon / Henry and Tyriamon kind of get summoned by Omnimon, who then takes them to where Takato is with Growlmon. And then they have to fight against this Digimon called Mephistomon. And during the time frame, all three of them, get up to their their ultimate forms of, War Growlmon and Rapidmon and Talmon, and then they all form into their Trinity Burst movie exclusive attack, where they then, form into this kind of, Phoenix looking thing, and then they defeat Golfmon, that is what Mephistomon digivolved into. And then they just, that stops all the chaos that's going on in the real world, and then they just kind of continue their little vacation, which is just kind of cute. So I like that they showed that, just a fun little thing there. Again, I am going to end up doing a review where I talk much more about Digimon Battle of Adventure at some point in time. And then going back into the anime, we see more of, Rika's relationship with her mother and with her grandmother and everything. There's one moment where Henry actually has Rika's cell phone, and her grandmother called the cell phone, and she's like, whatever you want for Rika, I'll pay it. Just give me back my granddaughter. And Rika takes the phone back from Henry, and she goes, Grandma, it's okay. I'm fine. The grandma is fun. The grandma tries her best with Rika and her own daughter, and tries to act like a peacekeeper between the two of them and everything. And there's this moment where Rika and her grandmother were going to go shopping, but she just wanted jeans, and then Renamon, or Rika's mother, calls and talks to the grandmother, and she's just like, well, Rika didn't want to shop. shop. She didn't want to. Oh no, I'm gonna faint. Rika's mother, Rumiko, is just like, oh god, no, she doesn't want clothes. This is bad. And then, they defeat several other devas, and then eventually, Vicaramon appears, who is, the giant boar, and he's attacking the city and causing so much damage and everything. And, Takato and Rika and Henry are all, up to their ultimate forms with their Digimon and fighting against him. They come up with some clever ways of how to defeat him. And eventually they are able to defeat him. The first Deva that they fought, Mijiramon, or Mihiramon, whichever one, the tiger, he actually caused a lot of damage to all three of them when they were in their champion forms, and he actually almost caused Renamon to, basically just turn into her data, and that caused Rika a lot of fright at that point in time. And so, yeah, we kind of see this relationship where she's gotten a lot closer to Renamon and a bit more affectionate to Renamon at times. Still kind of standoffish to the boys as well, but she starts to develop a little bit more of a friendship with Jerry during this time frame, and starts to teach Jerry how to battle and deal with different, how to start, being a tamer and everything, because Jerry wants to become a tamer. Jerry's video will be next. Oh, Jerry. Oh, Leomon. And, after, during the time frame when they have to defeat the boar Deva is when Kuramon shows up, and he kidnaps Calamon and takes Calamon to the digital world. And, all the tamers and their friends are like, okay, well, we have to go to the digital world so we can save Calamon because he's our friend. And we don't know what the Digimon Sovereign and the Devas are going to do to him. We just have to go and help save him. And so, at this point in time, we have, Takato talks to his parents, and Henry talks to his dad and sister, and Rika, we see this moment where, all the kids kind of get scolded by their parents a little bit, but, Rika's mother is just so happy that Rika is okay, and we see her just hugging Rika. It's just like, I was so worried about you. I'm just so happy that you're safe. And Rika is just somewhat, confused by this, because, her mother doesn't always get this affectionate or this emotional. But then we see this moment where Rika's grandmother shows up and sees Renamon. And, she talks to Renamon, and she, talks to Renamon and Rika, and she's like, I always knew that my granddaughter had a guardian angel. I just didn't think that it would be a big yellow fox. And, Renamon is this kind of very honorable warrior type thing. She kind of has that mentality to a degree. It's developed a little bit more. Than just, destroy a Digimon and load its data. She's gotten a little bit more, a little more honorable in the way that she acts, and such. And, she, promises Rika's grandmother that she'll bring Rika back safe and make sure that she's safe and everything. And, her grandmother very much appreciates this, for, the way that the two of them act. And, that's when, Rika and the rest of them then, head off to the digital world. And, Takato has, the flag, and they get, the communicator from Yamaki, and Rika doesn't care for Yamaki all that much, but, he kind of slowly becomes an ally. Again, besides Rika, Yamaki just straight up goes through, this biggest character transformation, character arc, in the entire Tamers series, in my opinion. He goes through this biggest one, and then Rika is second to that. Actually, no, I'd then say Impmon is second, and then Rika, in that regards, and how much they change as a character in regards to their mindset. But so they head off to the digital world, and at one point, Rika, Kazu, and Kenta end up getting separated from the group, and Renamon gets separated from the group. And where they end up running into Digimon and Babamon, who are these two married Mega Digimon that result in a very interesting time that they have to spend with those two. And then they get back to the other Tamers, and then they're kind of separated again. Then they end up in a different area, a clock area, themed area, as opposed to the desert area, where they end up meeting Ryo Akayama and his Digimon Cyberdramon. And of course, Rika knows exactly who Ryo is right off the bat. And these two just have a very antagonistic relationship where it's much more from Rika's side because she kind of has like this issue with him because a lot of people just thought, oh, the only reason that she became the Digimon queen and everything was because Rio disappeared. So he was the only one that could beat her. So, and like Kazu, specifically Kazu, Kenta a little bit, but mostly Kazu kind of harps on this a lot when they meet Rio, who is kind of referred to as the Digimon King, and harps that the only reason that Rika's the Digimon Queen is because Rio left, and that just makes Rika even more angry. And like Rio kind of like tries to make Kenta stop this or make Kazu stop doing this, but it doesn't go super well. And, Rika kind of goes off on her own and eventually does actually end up finding Rika's actually the one that runs into Calamon first out of all of them. And, finds Calamon and she's so happy to see Calamon. And then, they get back to the group and like for like 3 seconds they're all together and then they get attacked by, several of the other, a couple of the Devas, and then Calamon is kidnapped again, and then Rika Henry, Takato, and Terriermon are all sent off on their own, and like the rest of them are stuck, and and then eventually they all get back together and everything, and that's when they end up having to deal with Beelzemon, and when like Henry's sister shows up, and when everything happens with Jerry and Leomon and Takato and Megidramon and then Gallantmon and all this other stuff happens. And then they end up going and having to deal with the Digimon Sovereign. And while they're dealing with the Sovereign, they deal with Chuchaomon first, and then Azulongmon shows up and kind of starts giving them an explanation about who the true enemy is. And, they go into this kind of pit area, and like during this time frame, and it's with both Henry and Takato have gotten their biomerge Digivolution and everything. In that regard, so they can become Mega Gargomon and Gallantmon and everything. And Rika and Renamon are kind of to the point where like they go down into the pit to try to get Calamon, kind of on their own. And, Rika kind of asks about, like, changing their own fate. And, Renamon's like, well, we kind of change our fates every day. And she's like, well, can we change Jerry's fate of, like, being alone? And Renamon's like, I don't think so. Jerry just kind of has to, like, she has to believe in her friends. And, she'll hopefully come out of this. And rightfully so, Jerry is in a very depressed state at this time. Again, that I'll be going over a lot more in Jerry's video. And during this time frame, like, Ryu shows up, and we see, all the D-Reaper, like, bubbling up in the pit a lot more, and, like, Rio and Cybermon kind of try to stop it, but that doesn't work, and then Renamon and Rika basically take a leap of faith together that results in them, their compassion and trust form, or, are on full display, and they're able to biomerge. And, well, they already were, like, reunited with Calamon again, because he was in the pit where the D-Reaper was, which was just a bad thing. And, so now they're biomerged into Sakuyamon. And then, she is, fighting against the D-Reaper, and, like, she has this great little speech here.
I, Sakuyamon, protector of all things true, will do my duty. River of chaos, O red sea of destruction, follow now my voice, and feel the twin blades of beauty and truth, then fall before my light. And, they're able to, at the very least, slow down the D-Reaper a little bit while the rest of the group are able to, like, escape out of the pit. And, kind of get away from where the D-Reaper is a little bit, but the D-Reaper keeps causing more trouble, and then it's just, like, they get the message that, like, the Ark is on its way, so they need to get back to, like, where they joined where they got to the digital world, and, Renamon senses something, and she's like, I sense Impmon, and he's still alive, and they're like, Rika, they got, like, a short time before the Ark's supposed to show up, so Rika and Renamon, like, run off as, like, Cubimon to get to where,
where Ipmon is, and they find Ipmon. He's just like befuddled as to why they came back for him. And like Renamon says, I've always had this bond with, with Beelzemon, with Ipmon. I can't explain it, but it's there. And they get Ipmon and they get back kind of not just in time for the arc, because the arcs are really kind of leaving, but like, the arc like stops what it's doing so they can get on. And, the others kind of scold Rika for the fact that she went back to get Ipmon. But it's just like him coming back with them is like the right thing, because then at least in the real world he's somewhat safer. She's not denying what Ipmon did, what Beelzemon did to Leomon, but it's like he doesn't deserve whatever his fate would be befallen of him in the digital world at that point in time. And they get back to the real world, and, Rika is, reunited with her mother and her grandmother, and they're so happy to see her, and she's happy to see them and everything. And, during that time frame, within like that week, the G Reaper has made its way into the real world, and it's starting to cause a lot of problems. And like Rika and her mother and her grandmother were like staying at this like very nice hotel. And, Rika's mother is actually kind of very concerned about what's going on. And, it's kind of like I know that you're going to go anyway. So, I got you this gift. And she gives Rika this bag, and she pulls out the bag, and, inside of it is like the shirt that Rika wears. It's like the shirt with the blue heart on it, which Rika's is like, there's like a jagged, like it's a broken heart. And this one's like full. And like, Rumiko shows that she's wearing the same shirt, but it's pink, and like Rika just kind of smiles at that, and she, puts on her new jacket, her new shirt, and like they head out. And, it's like this nice moment between mother and daughter that we see that they're getting closer in that regard. They're not going to ever be like best friends, but they're getting a lot closer in that regard. And, shows that, Rumiko is putting her faith in Renamon and everything. And, Rika meets up with, like, Takato and Henry, and then they have to start fighting to deal with the D Reaper, and then they sleep at the school, and then they go to Takato's bakery, Takato's parents' bakery, where they, they bake a whole bunch of bread and everything, and we have this, funny moments there with the three of them and their Digimon, and baking all this bread and then sitting and eating it. And then Yamaki shows up, and like they kind of tell Yamaki about the D Reaper, and then they head off to go and try to fight the D Reaper again. And this is when they're having trouble with being able to biomerge, because they're not data. Their Digimon are data, but they're not. And I apologize if I sound stuffed up now that I noticed that. During this time frame, it's Rika and Henry and Takato can all feel the pain from the different attacks that their Digimon are receiving. And, because they've been able to biomerge with their Digimon, so that bond is even closer, is even stronger, and now it's just more of that. They can feel that pain even more. We had hints of it earlier, but now you can very much feel it. And then, this mysterious girl shows up, and it's, Alice McCoy, and she has her, her Digimon Dobermon, and she explains that Dobermon's, his mission was, he was sent by the Sovereign in order to, give the Digidestin the ability to biomerge in the real world so they have a chance against the D Reaper. And, but it was at the cost of his own life, and he gives them the power. And we see, it was at the cost of Dobermon's own life, and they receive the power. And we have this moment where, like, they each kind of give this own little, inner monologue to themselves about, like, kind of showing the growth that the three kids have gone through in that time frame. And this is Rika's. Sometimes I can't believe I'm the same person who only thought about destroying Digimon and downloading their data. Being the best was the only thing that mattered. But now that I'm friends with Henry and Takato and the others, I realize that there's more to life than just fighting, and that there's courage and friendship too. What makes it tough now is that I have to worry about someone else besides just me. Now, I don't know if I want to fight at all, seeing all the pain it's caused. I mean, look at Jerry. But this isn't really about fighting.
It's about having the strength to do what needs to be done to save the world.
And, you know, from there is, you know, they're all biomerged and they're all dealing with the, you know, the D Reaper, and, you know, Justimon shows up that is Rio and Cyberdramon biomerged. So, you know, we have that whole instant where they have the three of them, or the two of them, having to deal with each other, because Rio like constantly kind of flirts with her and calls her princess and honey and sweetie and everything. Partially to annoy her, but I think also Rio definitely has a crush on Rika. As I stated, a lot of people put like Rika and Rio together, which I'm fine with. I slightly prefer Takato and Rika together, but there's also Takato and Jerry, but then other people put like Rika and Henry together because they kind of balance each other out a little bit. So, you know, there's different ships, and it's just like, they're 12. Stop. Not that I didn't do that with the original series too, so yeah. But what we see happen is, you know, they have several battles where they deal with the D Reaper, and then when they end up, one of the time frames is, you know, one of the mornings they arrive at the bakery and there's a note that says, come to Rika's house, and it's from their parents, and they get there and Rika thinks it's a trap by their parents. I'm assuming to like, what, capture you and take you back to a safe place. But like they go to Rika's house, and like, you know, Takato's mom and dad and Henry's mom and Rika's mother and grandmother are there, and they made all this food for the kids and their Digimon, and they're all just like sitting and talking and having this, you know, these nice little conversations and everything. And like Rika's mom's like, you know, we were cooking for hours, and Rika goes, you cook? And she's like, I have more surprises in me than you think. You know, so it's just like, you know, something Rika didn't know about her mother. She can cook. Because usually the grandma's the one that's cooking and occasionally has weird recipes. But we get those different moments. And, you know, throughout the course of, you know, that little moment, you know, then there's, you know, we have this moment where, you know, all the Digimon sense the bad thing is coming, and they have all the Digimon run out, and like all the Tamers get hugs from their parents. And it's still this moment where like the Digimon themselves are somewhat fascinated with the fact that, you know, this concept of what a parent is, because Digimon don't have parents. They're just kind of there, I guess would be the way of putting it. But, you know, they're somewhat fascinated with this idea. And the D Reaper even has a problem trying to comprehend what a parent is. So we have that too. And, you know, during this time frame, you know, they have, you know, battles with the D Reaper. And then, you know, they figure out that Jerry is inside the D Reaper and they have to get her out. Like, Beelzemon shows up and, like, helps them. Try to save Jerry, and we have all of this happening. And then what ends up happening is like we get like another like a week time skip, because like the Digimon, or like the monster makers, Henry's father and his friends and Yamaki are working on like a plan on how to defeat the D Reaper. And during that time frame, what happens is you know, Rika and her mother and her grandmother, Renamon, kind of went off to this like very nice hotel where they have like the four of them sitting at like a table. And, you know, they basically ask Renamon whether or not Digimon have gender. And Renamon goes, well, Digimon don't really have gender. And Rika's mother says, which, bear in mind, this was in 2001 when it's set, and when the script was written. And it was written, well, you have to be a woman because only a woman can wear fur that good. I'm like, okay, backing off now. But I mean, like in the dub, she does tend to have a female voice. In certain dubs, she does have like, I think in the Latin dub, she does have like a male voice for a couple of her forms. So there's like a difference there, and you know, it's not a set in stone thing in regards to gender for Digimon. I guess Digimon are gender fluid to a degree, unless it's like blatantly like Anjawomon or Anjamon, where it's like very much like a certain gender, but it differs. And you know, then it's time for, you know, they get like this message from Henry that it's time to show back up to battle, and you know, they show up, and it's, you know, Rika and Renamon and Takato and Henry, or Takato and Gilmon and Henry and Terriermon and Rio and Cyberdramon and everything, and like they're all ready to battle and biomerge into their forms, and they head off to go and fight against the D Reaper. And one of the moments that happens during this battle is, Takado's over here trying to deal with this part of the D Reaper to save Jerry, and like Henry and Rika and Rio are over here dealing with this other part of the D Reaper. And Rio tells Rika that, like, okay, so our best chance of dealing damage to this thing is for you to put all of your power into my blade, and then I can use it to, slice the D Reaper. And, Rika gathers up all of her power and, like, sends it, like, all of her armor just, like, shatters and everything. So it's just, like her base form of Tsukuyamon without any of the armor on. And, like, sends all of that power over to Rio, and like he absorbs it into his blade, into Justimon's blade, and then he's able to, slice through the D Reaper. Causes a lot of damage, but unfortunately the D Reaper just kind of starts to stitch itself back up again. But, so it's just like, oh, God, that didn't work. And, the Digimon Sovereign at that point have like showed up and like dragged the other D Reaper in, and then this is when Terriermon and Henry have to go in and spin really fast to make the D Reaper de-evolve, and so we have that happening. And the Digimon are very protective of their tamers in this regard, because during this time frame they kind of like separate back into their regular forms, and like they have to get the tamers out of the D Reaper because it's very dangerous for them to be in there without any form of protection. And they are able to, they save Jerry and they defeat the D Reaper and everything. And then we have the moment where they're all just like relaxing in the park, watching, as like the rest of the D Reaper is, I guess, being sucked into the digital portal, so it's gone, bye-bye. And, it was no longer a threat. And, it's happy, and then all the Digimon start shrinking, as I stated before, and glowing and shrinking, and, back to their, to their in-training forms, to their baby forms. And, Henry's dad shows up and explains to them that it was, it was either the Digimon or the world. And, the Digimon aren't dying, but they have to go back to the digital world. And, we have this moment where, like, Rika is, like, holding Viximon, and she's like, but I can't lose you. I love you. And, it's like one of those very rare moments where we have Rika actually, say that sentiment that she actually loves Renamon, that she loves Viximon and such. But, all the Digimon are just like, it's okay, you'll see us again. Either we'll find a way back, or you'll find a way back, and we'll see each other again. And we see them all fly up, they part and they all fly up into the digital portal. And, given by the end of this, they're all crying and saying goodbye and everything. Very tearful goodbyes, which is, again, hard to deal with, still sad to watch. And what happens is, we know that, like, somehow the digital portal opens back up a little while later. We know that Rika continues to be friends with Henry and Takado, and Kenta and Kazu and Jerry and Rio and such, still is friends with all of them. And then eventually they are able to get their Digimon back, because that's when we go into the Digimon Runaway Locomon movie, which Rika is kind of a center part of the beginning of that movie, because it's like they're all trying to plan out like a surprise birthday party for her. In the English dub, it's her mother took her to like the museum to see art stuff, and in the Japanese, it's like they were supposed to be going cherry blossom watching. So, either one would have worked, I guess, for them to use in the dub, but, and then, Rika does not want the surprise party. And then this is when, Locomon shows up, and her and Renamon end up, getting on the train at some point where Takado is also on the train, and, they try to stop the train. And then Rika, just because she's, very stubborn, actually just ends up picking up like a giant crowbar wrench thing and tries to like smash the engine on Locomon. But she kind of gets possessed by Parasimon and ends up trying to attack Takado and Renamon. And Renamon actually, like, I believe takes several of the hits, so Takado doesn't actually get hurt, because Renamon can, of course, heal a lot faster than Takado could. So, like, we have Rika chasing Takado through the train with the giant wrench. And she's also talking about singing because, Parasimon kind of has her trapped in, like, a mindscape where she's kind of, hallucinating / kind of daydreaming about her father. And she's like, I want to sing. And she's, like, singing this song with her, to her father. And we get kind of this a little bit where we see some of their like strange relationship, that like he kind of like left and went away and everything. And the song's actually really sweet. And, you know, Gilmon at one point shows up and he's able to just, you know, destroy the Parasimon that's on Rika. And, you know, saves her that way. And then, you know, Takato and Renamon are able to save Rika from falling off the train. And then, of course, you know, they all biomerge and they have to deal with, you know, Parasimon, all these Parasimon that start falling from the sky. And, you know, all four biomerge and they're all fighting against them and they're able to defeat them all. And then we cut to, you know, Rika's birthday party afterwards. And, you know, she's just, you know, Rika is, you know, kind of like, yeah, sure, party, whatever. Not happy about it, of course, but she, you know, blows out the candles and, you know, lets everybody do what they want for the party. And then she heads off on her own. And it just kind of ends with her, like, having memories of her dad. So, we don't really get too much more about that relationship. Slight thing here for her family. We, of course, have Rumiko Nonaka, who is her mother. We have Seiko Hata, who is her grandmother. And then we never get her father's name, but I think in Runaway Locomon, he's voiced by the same guy that voices Yamaki. And I know that they're not hinting that, like, Yamaki is you know, Rika's father, because if that was the case, then A, Yamaki would be her last name. B, Rika's mother would recognize Yamaki right off the bat, and, you know, Rika would recognize him off the bat too. But it might be that, like, Yamaki somewhat reminds her of her dad. Might be part of that, because she just has, like, an issue with Yamaki anyway, even though he's clearly an ally by this point in time. But, you know, so Rika goes through this as the most major change out of all of the Tamers, from where she starts off at the beginning of the series to where she ends the series. And just, you know, her bond with Renamon gets to be so strong and everything. Not that the other Tamers don't have strong bonds with their Digimon, but it gets even stronger in regards from, like, where they were in the beginning and everything. So I do like that they show that with Rika. Renamon, I think, is my favorite out of all of the partner Digimon from this season. One of the other Digimon Tamer quizzes I've done has, like, me with Renamon as my partner, which is fine by me. So there's, like, lots of stuff that goes on with that. And Rika is actually one of the ones that we see use modify cards the most. I am going to end up doing a separate video where I go through a bunch of the different modify cards that they use in the series and in the movies, and kind of explain what each of them do a little bit more, but that's not for this one. So that's what we have for this, for Rika and Renamon. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If I missed something about Rika and Renamon, which is always a possibility, please comment about that, or please comment about, like, a favorite Rika and Renamon moment that you have. So I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Dog. Peppy.